us out on those platforms. And then you can also leave questions there. So we are live now. So if you have questions for Carmen, you can ask it via Facebook as well as YouTube, or you can ask a question here on WhatsApp as well. That number 0617981075. And Carmen and myself, we had quite a hectic morning today, and so we arranged to get onto StreamYard, of course. And today we're going to be talking about the current economic climate and also the demand for freestanding homes and the availability of qualified buyers in the real market. We're going to talk about all of those things. But again, let me start off again with Carmen. How are you?
I'm okay. Could be better, but yeah, we push through, eh? I've
Yeah, and
explained to you this morning. Um, I can't find my car keys. It's the weirdest thing. I was at home for about 15 minutes and needed to go out to a tenant viewing. And yeah, so it's a mystery. We're still waiting for it to be solved. I'm just hoping that the Holy Spirit will just open up some things there for us and give us some guidance.
no, but I'm glad you sorted and we could make a plan to talk about the world of property with Meraki Property Solutions. And it is season two, episode two. Yeah, we're
Yes,
moving.
we're
We're
moving.
moving. And let's get into those questions for today. And like I mentioned to the listeners now, if you have any questions for Carmen, feel free to send it via WhatsApp. That number is 061 798 1075. You can also do it on Facebook as well as on YouTube. So let me ask you just that question about the impact of the economic climate today and how there's a demand for freestanding homes and also the availability of qualified buyers in the real estate market. Over to you, Carmen.
Okay, so I think that question is a good one, and it spreads across to both sellers, or I would say buyers and prospective tenants. And we are finding that people are moving more towards the freestanding homes. Although there's the convenience with the lock up and go, a bit more security in the community
Mm,
schemes and so on. We find that the levies and often restrictions around parking is a bit of a deterrent in those kind of schemes. So with the freestanding homes, especially rentals, we are finding that families are pouncing on the three on mostly your large homes, 2 3 bedroom rentals. And yeah, so we've listed a property last week. We were testing the market a bit, just to see, are we going to get the rental that we felt were market related. And I must say, the interest, within a week, we're sitting with 3 applications. And if you look at it, it's about the product, ultimately, am I getting value for money? And people are still looking at that, even though there is more demand than supply at the moment. People are still quite cautious about spending, because am I getting value for my money? And I think the freestanding homes are showing that. And of course, it's also buyer dependent, because when you get your single people, they might opt more for the community living, because there's added security, and that kind of thing. But yeah, that is what we're experiencing in the market at the moment.
yeah. I want to just ask you in terms of sometimes we have a buyer's market and
Mm.
other times we have a seller's market. And where do we find ourselves now currently?
So, a seller's market is generally where there is little supply and more demand, right? So, the sellers can achieve better selling prices because they've got lots of options or lots of buyers, a big buyer pool. And then when we look at the reverse side of that, is where we've got a huge supply but low demand. So we've got a lot of stock on the market, and we've got a little, I would say, qualified buyers or qualified tenants. and because there's so much stock, they can shop around. So then the buyer has sort of more power, and that is the buyer's market. What I find is it's not a blanket approach, and it really is area specific and price specific. So if you look at the different areas and the different price bands, you would find that it differs.
Okay, so good to have an expert in studio or even virtually with me. But I want to just cotton on to something, and I want you to elaborate on the challenges faced due to low consumer affordability, and also the effects on both rental sales and sales rather stock in the Meraki area.
Okay, so I touched on this a bit last week, and I did mention that December was quite a busy period, and we found that our rental stock is we've got three rentals that are still pending at the moment, and we've got applications on them. So by the end of this week, that rentals will be taken. So we find that there is a huge demand for rentals at the moment. Even if you go onto other sites to look for comparables and things like that, we can see that the rental stock is quite low. So it's probably not just Meraki that is experiencing that, and it's across the board, where we've got people constantly looking for rentals. Some have affordability, but they can't just find a suitable property. So that tells us that there is less buyers on the market because people are still moving towards rentals as an option. And I do believe that they are waiting to see that's what's going to happen with the next two interest
Mm,
rates. There is prediction that it's going to drop, but we can't be sure. But people are still sort of looking in that way. So,
mm.
in terms of affordability, at the moment, rentals are seems to be more popular than the sales.
But you've also mentioned that if you are not ready at the moment and you can
Mm,
rather
mm.
wait
Yeah,
till you are comfortable and when it's your time
absolutely,
to buy.
absolutely.
So let
Yeah.
me talk about something. I think you've touched on it in the past, but you would always mention you must look at your budget,
Yes.
and that will determine, of
Mm,
course, what you can
yeah.
afford. But what
Mm.
strategies are you implementing to address the shortage of qualified tenants? And how does this flexibility in approach contribute to overcoming these challenges?
Okay, so we've had to be quite flexible over the last while. We've got a very strict vetting criteria, right? One of the first things that we would need to look at is your gross income, at least one third of the rental amount, right? So that is the first check we do. Then we need to check, do you have enough surplus income to cover the
Mm,
monthly rent amount as well as any ad hoc things like utilities, alarm, fiber, etc. Right? So before we even process the application, that is what we will look at. And then from there, we will then do the credit report to see your past payment behavior. Do you have any adverse listings? The credit report that we use is quite good because they link to TransUnion, Experian, as well as a tenant profile network. So if you've rented from um, a company that has used the tenant profile network before, I can see this is how you've paid your rent. So I can also see what your monthly commitment is to debt, and what you are paying in installments. So even though you may have your gross income is one third of the rental amount, if your monthly commitments is exceeding that, I can see you don't have surplus income. So what we have found is that the number of credit reports we've had to do in order to close one rental unit has been quite a lot over the last while, because we probably have 8 out of 10 applications where there's adverse listings or poor payment behavior, etc. A lot of it has stemmed from COVID. and people having to go into further debt during COVID, or couldn't keep up with their monthly expenses. So before we would look at something like that and immediately decline because no, you've got adverse listings, or no, you're under debt review. We're taking a bit more time to delve into that and say, why did you go into debt review? What are you doing to take responsibility about your repayments? Have you got payment arrangements in place? How long before you're going to get that debt clearance certificate? And we find that some people went into debt review because they weren't given the correct advice. They thought that debt review was the answer, it would reduce their monthly cash flow, but they weren't explained about the consequences of going into debt review. And the consequences are the first 3 months, your creditors don't even get what they're supposed to, like if you were paying them, because the debt counselors are needing to get their fees. Also, even if you've paid up that debt in 2 or 3 years, you need to wait for a debt clearance certificate before you can start applying for other credit. So yes, a lease agreement is because once you're under debt review, you're not allowed to enter into any other credit loan agreements, and a lease agreement is excluded from that. But it does give us an indication, like I say, of previous payment behaviors. But like I say, we're taking a little bit more time to delve into the history of it, to see where it started. Did it start even way before COVID, and that is just the way you managed your finances? Or were there specific reasons, such as retrenchment, divorce, or anything else that created that? And once we get into that, we have to see, but have you taken responsibility to sort it out? And that is important for us. So, where we've previously looked at applications and straight out declined, we're spending a little more time on it, trying to see if there is a solution. And then also, we may have to increase the tenant deposit just to mitigate any risk because of the poor payment behavior. So
Okay.
we're having to just adjust a bit like that in the environment, and most landlords are comfortable with that. With that, as long as they've been made aware of it and their risk is being covered in some way or other. And
Awesome.
just a hint for
And the
tenants. Sorry, Marco, I know you might have another question, but the guys that tell us upfront at the viewing, this is my circumstances, we're happy to work with you and try. We can't always promise. But
Yeah.
the ones that keep quiet and everything looks good on paper, but the minute we do the credit report and everything is revealed, we're reluctant to
Mm.
work with tenants like that because they haven't been transparent from the get go. So if you're transparent from the beginning when you're submitting your application, it also just helps with that trust relationship. Mm.
Awesome.
Mhm.
And people's already asking for your contact details. If you're
Okay.
on WhatsApp and, oh, sorry, if you're on Facebook and YouTube, you will see all of the contact details scrolling on this particular screen. But we'll also give you the details at the end. If you have questions for Carmen, you can send those through to WhatsApp. If you're not on Facebook or YouTube, and then I'll pop that onto the screen for you as well. So that number 061 7981 1075. And then also, if you're watching via Facebook or YouTube, you can pose your question in the comments section. So you mentioned the high demand for rentals a little bit earlier. How do you plan to increase the stock? And I know I hear you say it's not just Meraki, but how do you
Mm.
plan to increase the stock for both rentals and sales to meet the market demands?
Okay, so with us, it's all about number one, giving a good service to our existing tenants because um, mouth to mouth referrals are the best referrals that we get. People that have had good experiences with us that would pass on our details. The listeners of CCFM that is listening out there and wondering, should they manage it on their own or should they appoint a rental agent? We look for leads like that as well. And then also we've like just increased our social media marketing campaign now for rentals. making people aware it is in demand. And if you were contemplating, should I rent or shouldn't I, now might be the time to get a good return on your investment. And also, we find that there's still a lot of scary stories out there. There's still a lot of people that are hesitant to rent because they've only heard the bad stories, but there are good stories. And if you are using a professional to place your tenant, whether you want to do a placement only and then manage it afterwards on your own, or whether you want to do management, yes, there are chances that people are still not going to pay because of circumstances, or people might still do something to damage your property. But if you've got the correct things in place from the beginning, like proper vetting, a correct lease agreement, and a proper and thorough moving inspection and photos to go with that, then there is more likely chance that you'll recover that loss that could happen. And it's also about when it's happening, acting fast, getting onto it. And when landlords deal directly from the tenants, because we often come on in the middle or at the end, because now the landlord is like, oh, they can't anymore, because they become emotionally attached to the tenant. They allow things because of that. And then they find difficult at the end where they need to put in the boundaries to actually do so. So having someone like us in place, it also just helps to detach yourself from the emotional part. And sometimes, well, it is business at the end of the day as well.
Yeah. I think it's time to bring Muhsina back into the fold as well, that she can advise as well. I don't know where that lady is, but
She's
she needs to
coming
come
next
back.
week. She was still just settling
Yeah.
in, getting back into the office. She'll be back next week.
Some people take extended leave, unlike us that
Yeah.
come back to work quick. Same on it, Muhsina, if when you watch this. And we got to land though. I've got one question that I want to pose at the end. Maybe I'll just ask you this in terms of just your insights into specific measures being taken to enhance the availability rather of Meraki properties for rental and sale. And just your thoughts very quickly.
For us again, and it is about continuing to give a specialized service, a knowledgeable service. And I feel also if we continue to, and especially now that we're on air, because when I come across people, it's very easily, oh, but you said this on air. And I
Yeah.
remember you said this on the show, and that was maybe season one, episode two, and I may have forgotten about it already, but the listeners remind me. So to continue to stick to what we say we are going to do, right? Do
Yeah.
what we say we're going to do, act with
Yeah.
integrity. And I feel by doing that, it automatically creates the trust value. And that is what this is all about, right? That
Yes.
trust relationship, and that it's mutually beneficial, and that we're acting in the best interest of both parties, right?
Yes.
And that is what I feel is necessary, especially in today's market. When things are going slow and stock is low, then it could be easy to sort of cut corners or do things the way you wouldn't normally do to sort of increase or boost that.
Yes.
But for us, it's continue as we would, whether the stock is low or whether the stock is high. The company values, vision, and mission remains the same.
Okay, so I've got one question for you. I'll put it on screen. Um, I'm not too sure how this would work out. It says, "Good day. Would it make the process slightly easier if you can pay 6 months rent up front?"
Okay, so that's a very good question. We often get the thing, oh, we can pay 6 months rent up front, or we can pay a year's rent up front. And often that would come from things where it's a once off payment, like maybe a retrenchment payout or a pension payout or inheritance or whatever the case may be, right? So we are happy to take upfront payments on the condition that we can prove consistent income after that 6 months has lapsed. So if you have sold your property and you now have proceeds, net proceeds of income, and you want to secure a rental for 6 months, then yes, sure. But you need to show me that there's consistent income after that period has lapsed. Because
Yeah.
what happens after 6 months and there's no income, you know?
So there's one more question for you in there. We got a land, but we'll squeeze this one in. Hi, I need some advice. The landlord doesn't supply us with electricity or usage of bathroom, but the rent is up to date. What should I do? That's from Ashley.
True, Ashley, that is basic services that should be included in the rental. It sounds like a shared space if they they're not allowing usage of that. You would number one need to check what your lease agreement says. Um, and the terms around usage of the bathroom and electricity, but those are basic needs. So whether your lease agreement includes it or not, it should be allowed. But if you have approached your landlord about it and he has not been forthcoming, then I do recommend that you go to the rental housing tribunal and do a formal complaint with them.
Okay, that's all we have time for this week. See, now it's heating up here,
Yeah.
Carmen. But you need to give them some contact details for those on Facebook and YouTube. You can see it scrolling down at the bottom. But for those who's listening to you, you got to give them some details quickly.
Okay, so it's 079 495 7358. That's my mobile number for WhatsApp and calls. 079 495 7358. And then my email address is Carmen at mirakipropertysolutions.co.za. And Miraki is Meraki. So that's it.
Yeah, so they can also check out more about Meraki Property Solutions. Go check it out on merakipropertysolutions.co.za. There's more info for you there, but that's where we're going to have to leave it for today. So thank you to you, Carmen. Thank you so much for making a plan. We
Yes.
made it.
Yes.
So next
Awesome.
week we have Carmen and Mohsina in studio, and then there's more detailed lawful questions that you can ask as well. With that, I'm saying goodbye to you on YouTube and Facebook as I end the stream over there.